If you want to achieve your weekly goals in one day, every single day, this video is for you because it is a 1-hour masterclass that I just gave to Tiling Simon's micro creators community, which is one of the best communities on the internet on helping individuals just like you build a very profitable personal brand. Thailand, which is a friend of mine, asked me to deliver the most actionable training I could to help them really access flow states for most of their days. And what you are going to be seeing next is really the full blueprint of what I call the 10x day. A day in which you're able to typically tap into 4 to 8 hours of flow states to get a lot done without disruptions and essentially level up your standards across the board. I've also included a template just for you that you can start using to map out this day. I guarantee that if you consistently chain 10x days, your productivity and performance will skyrocket and your business and career will be accelerated like nothing else. You don't need more marketing, you don't need more sales, you don't need, random stroke of luck. What you need is to master yourself and perform at your peak every single day. And this template will virtually guarantee that is the case. I honestly believe so. So watch the video in full so you understand the nuances of what I'm discussing, but also click on the link below, get your template, and please start using it because it is the same template I use every single day. Check it out. It's the same template. So use it yourself. I guarantee it works. Let's get to it.
Okay, awesome. We are live. Guys, we have an awesome guest masterclass today. We have Leon Castillo talking about the 10x day. If you guys do not know, Leon is the most insane productivity expert I have ever seen. I cannot overhype him enough. In the message earlier, I said that next to Danco, this was the biggest guest we were going to have on. And I truly meant that. Maybe not the biggest in terms of social following, but I think in terms of impact, how incredible the ideas are, and just the amazing, amazing reviews that I've heard from other people who have taken his system. Leon is probably the person I'm most excited to have on out of every guest we've had. And we've had probably 50 guests at this point. So that's my introduction. Everyone, get your notes ready. You're going to want to take a lot of them. Leon, thank you so much for being here, man. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you everyone for joining the call. And let's get to work. Let me share with you how to have an actual 10x day. To comment a little bit on the presentation. So what do I do just for the sake of the presentation? I'm an investor originally, used to be an architect, had a very fast professional transformation because I'm a certified peak performance geek. So I basically researched the hell out of how to really be at my best every day because I started my career at 27 instead of 22. Long story short, took the long major, took forever to finish architecture, ended up joining a consulting firm at 27. I felt behind, so I did what anyone would do is how can I kick on this and really move super fast? And it worked. Within 30 months, I was a private equity director. Right. So everything I'm going to be sharing with you is, the outcome of more than 10 years exploring this and more than 6 years teaching and mentoring and coaching this. Right. And the topic of the presentation, without further ado, is the 10x day. And the goal is to help you achieve in one day what you previously achieved in 1 week. You may have heard this phrase before. You may think I do not mean it literally, but I actually do. You can literally achieve in one day what you previously achieved in 1 week if you know how to prime yourself from every aspect of your performance to access flow states. If you understand what is the neurochemistry of the brain, how does it work, how can you psychologically prime yourself to really be focused, how to segment your day, and how to optimize the hell out of yourself to get more done. And also, and more importantly, have more fun, right? Because the goal is not to work every day. The work is to build the lifestyle that we actually want. So I need to preface through with this idea, right? Success in business, so you understand exactly what we're talking about. It's like having success in sports. You have to master two kinds of skills. And most people forget about performance skills. Technical skills is what you do. Performance skills is how you do it and why you do it, right? It is the kinds of things that allow you to be the best. Michael Jordan was not the best because he was 10 times better at dribbling or passing or shooting. He was very good, don't get me wrong, but it was his ability to prioritize, show up at his best every day, lead the team, execute, get in the zone or in a flow state consistently, really work on the things that made him special. All of those performance skills are the things that we typically teach and are the things that actually make the most impact in anyone's career, right? This is true for entrepreneurs. This is true for creators. This is true for athletes. This is true for anyone. And athletes typically go to high performance training center to prep for the Olympics, and entrepreneurs come to us, right? This is what the work we do. They are already successful. They know how to do stuff. They have revenue coming in their business, but they might be overwhelmed. They may be, too stressed out. They may not be prioritizing enough. They may not know how to consistently show up at their best. That is what we help them do. Now, why do we do this? Well, everything hinges on a very simple fact, right? That you already know that to be true, that our minds have not evolved to perform at your peak. Nobody wakes up and just stops like banging out high quality work in full focus. That doesn't happen, right? We're wired for survival, which typically implies comfort, distractions, and negativity. You need specific training to consistently think and focus at peak capacity. No one just wakes up and wins the Olympic gold medal. Nobody wakes up and builds a seven-figure business. You need to train yourself to do the right things for long enough without getting distracted and doubtful. And you need mental training for that. Most people never train this. Most entrepreneurs never train this, which is why they fail or take too long to succeed. They typically learn these things after many years of going through the motions, a couple of business failures, maybe one divorce, like all sorts of things that were easily preventable if they could actually do the things they needed to do. And the data is super clear on this. So 40% of entrepreneurs never gets more than 30 minutes straight of focus time in a workday, and only 11% gets more than 2 hours at a time. The average entrepreneur, knowledge worker as a whole, checks email or Slack or Telegram or whatever every 6 minutes. Every time you do it, it creates something called attention residue, which we won't go very deep into this presentation, but in essence, your brain slows down. 70% of the average workday is wasted. About 9 out of 10 people procrastinate 2 hours a day. 9 out of 10 have self-doubt, self-esteem issues that stem from a lack of the results they want. Only 6% of entrepreneurs achieve their goals, and 3 out of 4 have both experienced burnout or stress that affects their health, right? So this is the research on the current state of burnout and stress-related situations for entrepreneurs, right? Now, this is not how do you solve this? You don't solve this by learning marketing skills or sales skills or hiring people. If you need to solve this through performance training. And already I'm doing like a big ass presentation, so I'm raising the stakes and I'm going to deliver. But this is why this is so important for you to understand. Already in 2012, McKinsey, which is the biggest consulting firm in the world at that time at least, realized that at top performers, so at 8 out of 10, let's say in performance, was 8 times more productive than an average performer in highly complex occupations, which is how they call business. 8 times more productive. In some knowledge-centric domains with huge leverage built in, like software engineering, the difference can be 100x, right? According to Naval Ravikant. And this is in 2012. This is before TikTok. I wouldn't want to know what the difference is these days, right? And also, they realized in the same study that about the average performer only spends 2 hours in flow a week. So about 5% of the total time they're working, assuming a 40-hour work week. So with this whole presentation introduction, how much time do you think you spend in flow, or do you know for a fact you're spending flow on average per week? Thailand, for instance, you can start.
Man, maybe like maximum like in 30 minutes to an hour a day. I would say for me, like that's not much. That's probably like 3.5 to 7 hours a week if I'm lucky.
Which is already 3 times the average, but yeah. So you see, this is not typical. More 1 hour a day on the chat, 1 hour a week, 1 hour. Okay, guys, well then, Merry Christmas, because I'm going to show you exactly how to get at as much as 10 per day if you're fully trained. All right, so this is the state of the state of the knowledge world, specifically related to entrepreneurs and creators, so people that need to actually use their creative powers to get things done and design new solutions, right? So we're not talking about manual workers. So we're talking about, well, I didn't include this figure, but on average, rescue time, which is a software calculated that because they have billions of data, that on average, knowledge workers have 2 hours and 37 minutes of productive time. Right, so that is the average. What would happen to your careers if you could consistently get 10 hours or at least 6 to 8 hours every single day, it would skyrocket, right? But that's what we're here for. All right, let's go. So peak performance skills are the #1 business skills in the 21st century. This is like the #1 thing that I want you to get out of this presentation. And business schools do not teach them. And I know that because I am a business school professor here in Madrid in Spain, and I still haven't had the chance to teach it. I teach all this stuff. All right, so how do we get this done, right? So it's not as simple as just getting to your desk and actually doing the work, right? No, you have to prime yourself, and you have to prime yourself on 4 specific cylinders or pillars, right? One is spiritually, which has to do with your purpose, your core values, your awareness, your ability to really filter out the things that are not important in your life and filtering those that are important. The higher your spiritual performance, as we discuss it, you're more autonomous, the higher your ability to get in select tasks autonomously, and that leads to higher flow states. Mental performance has to do with having the right mindset and deploying the right behavior. So not self-sabotaging, not saying you're going to do something and then end up not doing it. Physiological performance has to do with how to manage stress, right? And this goes beyond just nailing sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Is also about how you manage your own nervous system through breath work. And executive-wise has to do with everything, or the decisions you make on the type of work that you do, how you prioritize, how do you plan, how do you execute, how do you tactically deal with the things that happen, how do you manage distractions. Those are executive performance categories. And this presentation is only going to cover the best advice on the executive side of things, right? So we don't have time to explore the whole methodology, but I'm going to give you the most important stuff on the executive side that you can apply today. All right, just the last thing before I get in. So I already told you guys, started my career at 27. I was an architect. Like recommendation, don't study architecture in Spain. Is like a very good way of fucking your life up for a few years. I made that mistake, graduated super late, but it had to catch up, and I eventually catch up very quickly because I applied everything that I'm going to be sharing with you. Eventually I got an award and a bunch of things, and now because of that, and now I run this business, and I'm also an investor, and I'm a professor at University here in Madrid, right? And I've been consistently doing these 10x days to finish my master's degrees instead of 2 years in 6 months, go from architect to private equity investment director in 30 months, and build Selfmastered working 4 hours a day to 6 figures in 6 months, right? So this stuff works, and it will work for you. Are you excited? I've been raising the stakes, right? I've been raising the stakes. All right, here we go. So this has 4 parts. One is prepping for the day, then is the actual day, like the actual work day, then is how do we rest, and then how do we finally recover, right? I want you, every single one of you, to understand yourself as what you are, a cognitive athlete, a business athlete. You need to take care of yourself like Usain Bolt takes care of himself. You must understand that you cannot work all day, every day, because you're going to burn out. You cannot disregard your nutrition. You cannot miss out on good sleep. You cannot just randomly show up at your desk and pretend to do good work. No, nobody randomly shows up at the stadium and gets a PR. That's just not how it works. You got to prep yourself. And the first thing we got to do is to have a good morning routine. Now, there's a lot of talk of the town about, do you need it? You don't need it. Is it a crutch? Is it not a crutch? Let me tell you, it is not. You need a morning routine. I don't care what Ormozy says. You need a routine, because the average human isn't trained in performance. And a routine in the morning that is, self-contained, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, that actually primes your nervous system and primes your whole, brain for performance is absolutely fundamental. Now, you got to do it the right way. And the right way means that it's efficient. So you perform it on autopilot. So you avoid time wasters, you avoid disruptions, you don't check your smartphone in bed, you don't do any of that stuff. You wake up and you get up. It also has to be productive. So the things that you do in your morning routine have to help you, right? Just randomly shouting affirmations or journaling or whatever, things that typically don't work, you don't do it the right way, won't necessarily help you. We've got to work on the things that actually help us move forward. And then preventive. We must avoid unnecessary stress buildup by not hitting the snooze button, by waiting 90 minutes to have the first coffee, that kind of thing, right? And my routine is very simple. Meditation first thing in the morning, just in case you're curious. Meditation 20 minutes, but don't need 20 minutes, but I like to do 20 minutes. Then I have some mental reprogramming protocol, which involves self-hypnosis. It's a mental stuff. And then I typically exercise or go for a walk. All of that happens within 45 to 1 hour every single day. That's all you need. And then you're off to the races and you have already primed yourself for the day, right? So morning routine is absolutely fundamental if you do it the right way. If it's productive, it's efficient, and it's preventive. Any doubts on this? We clear?
Crystal clear, man.
All right. Oh, we have more architects. Hi, Daniel. All right, so let's go. 10 hours of flow states, big promise. I know I can prove to you that this is possible, but again, you got to train yourself. So you won't get here on the first day, but we typically help our clients get in like 6 to 8 weeks. But this is the exact blueprint. How do most people, and most people are those that are untrained in performance, typically show up at their best and work, right? Well, they typically don't have a strategy. This is why they have all of these performance problems that we alluded before. They're never 100% focused or 100% resting. They're 100% on, 100% off, checking the phone quickly, switching between Slack, email, a couple tasks, making a quick phone call, then watching a couple of shorts or reels or whatever. And that what is creating is an inefficient brain over the course of the day. And this is a concept of linearity. You're all the time doing stuff, never resting, and most of what you're doing is inefficient. This is why productivity is so low. The solution to this is very simple, is re-architecting your routine and priming yourself for high quality cognitive work. Now, in order to make this work for you, we got to understand 2 big keys about how the brain works. The first key is that we have natural built-in biorhythms. We typically follow 90-minute energy slots. And this was already discovered in the 1950s, right? So this is not new. But productivity work hasn't really caught up to this quite yet. There's not much discussion about it. The idea here is that you can only sustain typically between 90 to 120 minutes of highly intense cognitive work. At some point, you will tire out. You can push against this, but that creates unnecessary stress buildup in the brain, right? So if you load yourself up with caffeine or modafinil or whatever, you can focus longer than this, but this is going to have an impact in your nervous system. You may be sustaining it for 1 day or a couple of days, but at some point you will pay the price. So what is the solution? The solution is to rest 30 minutes every 90 minutes and have clear cut sections of 2 hours, like you divide your day in 2-hour blocks, 90 minutes of work, 30 minutes of resting. And this allows you to surf your own natural rhythms, right? So the first key we got to understand is that we have our pre-built energy flow. And the closer we are to it, the easier it is for us to get the results we want. And the second thing is, and you're probably aware of this, is the fact that Parkinson's law is work spans to fill the available time. If we have 2 hours to do something, we're typically going to be doing the same work that if we had 8 hours. So the technical word for this is called forcing functions. We can leverage the fact that that we have a way of forcing our brains to focus to consistently compress cycle times, as Steve Jobs said, right? Consistently raise the stakes, consistently do more, consistently push ourselves. So if we know that 90 minutes is the most amount of time that we can consistently focus, and we know that the less time we give to a task, the higher our performance, if we don't stress ourselves out, which is why we rest, then you get the elite performer way, in which the goal now is not just show up and do work, is see how many ring fence sessions, which is the name I gave this way of working years ago, can you complete per day? Remember that the average person completes about 2 hours of work per day, 2.5 hours on average. Our clients, when we start working together, they do between 2 and 4, depending. I consider high performance above 3, right? So 4 or more, that's already elite. The goal of this presentation is to allow you to get to 5. You can get there. It's just a matter of priming yourself. But the structure is very simple. 90 minutes, 30 minutes, 90 minutes, 30 minutes. Is this clear? Now, can you move around? Yes, you can. Like it can be 87 minutes and 25 minutes, right? But the idea is that you do not push your brain outside of what it typically was designed to do. And then you also rest the right way. And we're going to go into how to rest, because resting is not, doom scrolling on Twitter or TikTok, right? That's not resting. We need a specific way of resting that allows our brain to lower our brain waves, to activate a healing response, and give us the chance to show up with higher energy later down the day. In fact, our clients typically say that it's like 6 p.m. for them, and they are as tired as they were before at noon. So what happened? They did not accumulate all of this unnecessary stress that I was alluding to. All right, so this is the idea. You segment your day in 90 minutes and 30 minutes. 90 minutes for working, 30 minutes for rest and recovery. And this works because, first of all, it creates a very clear deadline within your day. Creating a deadline helps you focus and keeps your motivation high. It also shortens your feedback loop on your performance. I'm going to show you in a minute what that means, because this is a real game changer. And that allows you to understand what is your skill level and understand what are your energy levels, right? So for instance, let's say that you want to, have no idea, write a report, and you've never written a report or whatever. And then you show up and you say you're going to do it in 90 minutes. And at the end of the 90 minutes, you've done half the report. And you're tired and didn't like the experience at all. But what that tells you is your skill level is not where you thought it was. And that's okay, because you can recalculate for the next ring fence session how to actually do it better. You get into the mindset of looking at the replay and tweaking your own performance, right? And that is a 10x day. It's a collection of 5 ring fence sessions followed by a rest and recovery period. Within those rest and recovery period, you just have lunch, go for a walk, do active recovery protocols. The idea is that this is the ultimate pinnacle of productivity. You cannot really sustain more than this on any given day. And the goal is to consistently get in the habit of getting closer to this over time, right? I can deploy 3 weeks of this before I kind of burn out, but you don't need to consistently do 3 weeks. You can do this 2 or 3 days in a week, can be like that, right? And that already is going to give you way more bang for your buck and way more productivity. Does that make sense? Yes, 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 yes. Yes, okay, cool. Any doubts so far? No, cool. All right. So, all right, now let's turbocharge it. Now we're getting to the nerdy stuff. I was doubting whether to put it or not, but let's just go for it. How do we maximize this protocol, right? How can we consistently become better over time? How can we achieve there's this quote by the scientist that first studied flow state, who's called Csikszentmihalyi, said that the mark of a master is the ability to give objective feedback to oneself. That is what we want. How can we do this? Well, we leverage what I call the Selfmastered protocol, which is at the beginning of every ring fence session, you carefully create an intention for that. I'm going to write exactly 1,000 words on this specific topic, and this is how I think it's going to go. And at the end of the 90 minutes, you reflect on how did you perform? What is the difference between the planning and the execution? How far away you are, for the good or bad, of where you thought you were going to be. And this habit of looking at the replay 5 times a day is going to change your life. I can guarantee that. Because every time, the results you want are not 10,000 hours away, are 10,000 iterations away on whatever you want to achieve. So the faster you iterate, the faster you get it. And everything hinges on your ability to set a hypothesis, do this action, reflect. Set a hypothesis, do the action, reflect every day. Takes 2 minutes and 5 minutes at the end of the day to compile this information. I use a tool for this, and that's it. And every single day you're getting better. Every single day you're filling in forms. Every single day you're learning about yourself. Every single day you're becoming anti-fragile, which is a favorite term of Thailand. And this is what it looks like, right? Full nerdy, but this is what a full kind of self-master day would look like with a 1 hour pause in for lunch, right? What is the input? So what is the thing that we're going to be achieving? What is the process? How are we going to be doing it? What is the output? What did we actually achieve? And how do we learn, right? And this is systems thinking applied to productivity. So this is a blueprint for a 10x day. Now, I hear you, and I get this A lot. So what happens when things don't go your way? What happens when you need to send an email? What happens if people call? Okay, we're gonna cover all of that because this system is perfectly able to handle any distractions. The first system is well, any questions so far about the system before I go into the tactical stuff? Are we clear on this? Yes,
I
yes,
had
yes,
a
yes.
question that might be more tactical. I'm wondering what you recommend for the rest periods in between the work periods, and if you have anything in particular that you recommend.
I got you covered. I got you covered right after this. Like a few slides down the presentation. Cool, awesome. All right, so first of all, what happens when you have emails coming in, requests, people pinging you, folks asking things about, right? Well, typically, if you're entering a performance, you don't pay attention to this, you would just kind of attend to the distraction, right? And just you're prompted, you react, and you do it. But that derails a ring fence session. We typically should not do that. So how do we do it? Well, what is the system that I created years ago? It's in essence what I call the parking lot and the radar. So when you have an unexpected request coming away, you have to filter it through a system that basically tries to understand whether you're working on things that are meaningful or not. And if they're meaningful or not, whether they're immediately actionable or not. If something is relevant for you, but not immediately actionable, so let's say you have an idea on, I think I should create this new kind of email campaign sometime. Well, that's not going to affect your current line of work. So what do? You put it on the radar and you handle it at the end of the day. Sorry, you handle it whenever maybe on their weekly review or maybe some other day. But if something is immediately actionable, immediately meaning within the day, you put it in a parking lot. And this is the open loops that you close at the end of the day. So I always tell people, even if you have a client bugging you or whatever, that client can probably wait a few hours. If it's super urgent, at least until the lunch break. But don't allow yourself to be unnecessarily distracted. If there's a request coming in, if it's immediately actionable, put it in the parking lot. If it's not, but it's still useful, you're still going to derive value from it, put it in the radar. Does that make sense? Cool, awesome. Now, what about communications? I hear you, right? Every time. But yeah, but again, I have a team, I need to communicate with people. How do I typically use a ring fence system in the calendar? Well, it's very simple. You put it where it bothers you least, where it helps you accumulate less cognitive load. So that typically is right at the beginning of the day. That's what I do. I have a big team and we meet at the beginning of the day for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Then at the end of your morning, and then at the end of the day. At the end of the morning is because you're typically already tired and you're about to go into a good kind of break, or at the end of the day to close all loops. In any case, you're strategic. You don't work with your Slack open, you don't work with the email open, you don't work with the things that you know are going to distract you. Anything, no matter how urgent it is, can wait 2 to 3 hours. And even when I work for someone else, a Deloitte consulting firm, I already told the partners of the firm, like, hey, do you want me to do any kind of good work? I need to focus. So give me at least 2 hours since the start of the day to start replying to emails. So anyone can do this. There's no excuse. And this really has an impact because every time you task switch, your brain gets attention residue. Over time, the short-term memory of the brain starts making your cognitive performance go down. And this is why you feel absolutely tired at the end of the day. Now, what about email? How do you manage email? Again, one thing is to batch communications, and then we have to know how to deal with email, right? Because email is a blessing, but it's also a curse. And we follow also a very simple algorithm. If something does not require my attention, if it's not immediately applicable to my strategy that I'm following, if that has no relationship with the vision, well, that needs to go. So unsubscribe, delete, don't pollute your inbox with stuff that is not helpful. And if it's relevant but not today, you defer it. If it can be managed successfully within a couple of minutes, you leave it in the inbox or you process it. But you do that within the communication batches that we have set, right? So no such thing as playing around, no such thing as accessing the same email 3 times, no such thing as opening an email and not doing anything about it, because that is another way of creating attention residue in the brain. Does that make sense? We're consistently boom, 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 hitting. We're efficient. We're boom, 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 boom. We cannot allow ourselves to get distracted or anyone else to distract us. And then finally, and this is back to this idea of 1,000 iterations away and feedback loops and stuff. How do you guarantee improvement? This is a concept, the Japanese concept of Kaizen, continuous improvement. The idea is that if you ask yourself three simple questions every single day, at the end of the day, what happened? What did I learn? And how to improve tomorrow? You're going to be so much better. And I've been doing this since I was 26, right? Like 10 years ago. And every one of my employees, no matter their position, also send this to me every single day. And we also, you can see here, we use the ring fence session system also in the company. What this does is it helps you close our loops. It allows you to assess your progress, understand any pitfall that you may have incurred, what are the opportunities for the following day, and in essence, eliminate everything from your brain that that shouldn't be there, like any open loops, anything that may prevent you from actually having good recovery protocols at home when you get home. Is it clear? So blocks of 2 hours in which we work 90 minutes, we rest 30 minutes. We try to do as many of those as we can. If something unexpected pops up, we gauge the usefulness and the immediacy. If something is useful, not immediate, we write it down in something called a radar, and we will address it some other time. If something is useful and has to be dealt within the day, we write it in the parking lot and we put it, and we deal with it in the next communication batch or at the end. What else? The email, we don't play around. We don't open the same email 3 times. We deal with it as it comes. And finally, we make an end of day report to ourselves every single day in order to consistently move forward. And here's where you will put the information from the Selfmastered protocol, right? If you realize that in the second ring fence session, you wanted to write 1,000 words, you end up writing 800, because you didn't know that much about the topic, well, that's perfect, because you can put it here and you can learn that maybe you don't know that much about that topic, and that's okay, because you can do more research. And this is how you can become an elite performer. It's not magic. It's not a matter of talent, IQ, nothing like that. It's just a matter of consistently doing a few simple practices that guarantee results. Make sense? All right, cool. Then what else? All right, rest. So you were asking me about this. What is rest, right? So rest obviously is not scrolling on TikTok. Remember what the goal is. The goal is to avoid linearity, which is continually expending energy, doing stuff without never recovering. We need to fully recover in order to do something called oscillation, in which we are 100% on and 100% off. 100% on, 100% off. Every single day. This is how elite performers of any kind work. There's plenty of research on Anders Ericsson, which is the guy that studied this the most. He realized that the best violinists in the world, they also work the least, but they were very intense. They work in 90-minute periods, and then they would typically rest for 30 minutes. They naturally gravitated towards a way of working that perfectly aligned with their natural rhythms. So we have to take breaks, but we have to take them the right way. And the right way is what I call active recovery protocols, which in essence is anything that is helping you regulate your stress response. In essence, activating your relaxation response, your parasympathetic nervous system. Typically, it can be breath work, it can be going for a walk, it can be having lunch without your phone, it can go, doing HRV training, it can even do yoga if you're into that. It can be all sorts of things, but it's a highly specific activity that allows you to remove something called allostatic load, which is the wear and tear of stress in the body, right? So what I typically do is on the first kind of ring fence, in case you're wondering, I typically on the first one, I prepare a protein shake for myself after my first ring fence session. Take about 15 to 20 minutes, not really do much, then back to work. Then I would meditate, then I would have lunch, then I would do some breathing exercises or yoga, whatever, and then back to work. Does that answer your question? That in? Good, man?
You bet, man. That's awesome.
Cool. All right, so this is it. Question. People tell me, I feel guilty taking breaks. I have like a big team. I need to be on. No, you don't, right? Like elite performers need to rest. You have to work hard, you have to rest hard, and you have to play hard. Everything is possible if you are well structured. Now, can you check emails or have meetings in the breaks? Typically, it's not recommended because you are not activating the relaxation response of the body. But again, you do you. But the most important idea is that you really give yourself the ability to relax. And not only relax, but also encode information. So if you're consistently overstimulating the brain has a hard time discriminating which information is relevant and which is not. So you hurt your ability to encode the newly learned information. And that is a problem. Does that make sense? If we work very hard on learning something and then we don't give ourselves, our brain, the ability to fully encode that and put into the long-term memory, it will not trigger neuroplasticity. It will not be as effective, right? So this is very important. One of those secrets that most people never know, but it makes all the difference because it doesn't come natural. That's the problem. Now, how to manage the afternoon slump. I also get this a lot. So I didn't go into the chronotypes, but each one of us has a different chronotype, a different kind of natural proclivity to be high for specific type of alertness within the day. Some people are night owls, some people are larks, some people are very good at 5 a.m., others are very good at 10 p.m. And that's, but every single chronotype, every single one of us typically hit a slump in the afternoon. And that is okay, that is to be expected, there's no problem with it. Just put a longer break if you need it. I typically will take 1 hour break, maybe 1 hour and a half, depends on the day. And I would do like a quick lunch, a nap, and maybe a walk. And if I haven't gone to the gym in the morning, I will also go to the gym, right? Work with your own cycles, understand yourself, move in the best possible manner. And then what happens at night? So what should be done at night? Well, at night, the idea is to recharge fully. So the same philosophy as with the rest active recovery protocols, right? Spend as much time as you can lowering your brain waves, activating the stress response, and being typically away from any technological stimulation. As something very important too, is to spend time with your family or relationship or connection, seeing friends, because that is one of the major drivers of of happiness and performance, right? There's a lot of research lately in the past decade about this. So in essence, this is a perfect time for relationship, perfect time for family time, and for really taking yourself seriously. And there's this rule that 8 hours before bed, you should not consume caffeine. 5 hours before bed, you should not consume alcohol. 3 hours before bed, do not eat heavily, so to avoid the digestion from affecting your sleep. 2 hours before bed, stop working, and 1 hour before bed, turn off all screens. If you consistently do this, you will prime your brain over time to become an elite entrepreneur, elite creator, elite whatever you decide on becoming. It's not how hard you work, it's how strategic you are in managing yourself within your workday. And this is how you become a high performing entrepreneur, right? It's not about working hard. It's about finding leverage, it's about getting things done strategically. It's about having the right ideas at the right time. And that is only possible if you are performing. You're not a knowledge worker, you are a knowledge performer. So get into the mindset and the habit of strategically choosing how to get the most out of every day. Before I continue, is it clear? Any doubts? Who wants to? Do you see the full framework?
We do have two questions here. One of them is, how would you split this if you work a full-time job and are trying to build a side business?
That's a great question. So that's a great question. So how I would do it. Remember, what is the number one principle of everything that I discussed? The ability to understand how is the brain able to perform better and avoid the unnecessary buildup of attention residue and stress in the brain, right? So what that means is, if you want to have a higher chance, if you want to build that business faster, you must avoid overloading your brain throughout the day by checking your phone too much, by not resting, by doing activities that tire you unnecessarily. Because I'm assuming you're going to work on the business at night. Is that true? In the evening? Yeah, right.
Yes, so yeah, that was true for him.
You gotta get to at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or whatever, like fresh. And what does that mean? It means that you have avoided the unnecessary buildup of stress in the brain. I remember this is very we have a client that this is prototypical example, although the output is way outside of the average, right? But he got to 100K a month in 7 months. And this was a guy who had been buying every course under the sun on sales and marketing for 4 years. He spent 40K in over 4 years. He was so good at marketing and sales that he was even hired by Jay Abram, which is like a big marketing guru. He was his right-hand man. He wanted to build a business on the side, but he didn't have time because he was totally exhausted when like 6 p.m. hit. He said, I don't have a 9 to 5, I have like an 8 to 8. But anyway, that was the problem. He was totally exhausted and he couldn't actually create good work for himself at the end of the day. So he just push it, and never did it. So the work we did is exactly this, is re-architect the routine so that he could have 2 to 3 hours of good, solid work and over time replace his income. And it worked very well. It worked well because he was crazy technically skilled, right? So that's not a typical result. But remember that you need technical skills and performance skills. So this is my best advice. How can you avoid the prevention of cognitive buildup throughout the day? Do it. Deploy active recovery protocols. Don't look at your phone too much. Understand how to modulate your stress response. Test your chronotype to see how are you best primed for work. And when the time comes to working on your stuff, do it in 90-minute increments. You can squeeze 1 or even 2 ring fence sessions every day, and that should be good enough. Is it useful? I don't know who asked this, so.
Yeah, I think you might be typing in the chat, so it might take a second. We do have a few other questions that came in as well. Do you want to save them for the end or ask them now?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could. Let's go to the end. All right, so okay. This is the whole kind of executive way, well, not the whole, but like executive protocols designed to become a performing entrepreneur, right? Anyone can do this, not talent, it's not IQ, it's just the ability to consistently do the right practices over a sufficiently long amount of time in order to get the results you want, right? Now, there's more to elite performance than just segmenting your day, but this is the blueprint, this is the goal, this is what we want every one of our clients to achieve. Now, if you pair that with unwavering self-belief, a sense of purpose, clear core values, a sound strategic framework, the execution ability to create the systems that allow you to become more effective, that is when you typically win, right? And this is the part of the pitch. This is how we typically do it. And I want you to understand how I would do it in your case, right? You don't need to go through our program, but this is how we do it. And this is the best way of doing this. Typically, the first thing you want to do that may prevent you from showing up every day 10 hours without getting distracted and focused is understanding what is your current defaults. Why do you typically do right now that may not be aligned with what you are willing to build, right? Typically, what are your strengths, your weaknesses, the behavior default, the self-talk, how much you believe in yourself, what is your self-awareness, what is your attention span, what is your cognitive load, right? There's a lot of things that go into performance. We have tons of folks that come to us that say, I have a discipline problem. No, and we test them and they have an attention span problem, for instance, right? It's very important to locate what is the source of what we call the bottleneck of a lack of performance. Then the goal is to typically guide yourself or attack the right bottleneck at the right time. So this is why some marketing may not work, because if you get a new strategy, but you cannot execute it, then it's not going to work. You need to understand what is the thing that is preventing you from execution. And as I said before, we break it down in spiritual, mental, physical, and executive performance. Each level you are in life requires you to level up these 4 pillars at the same time. And we typically have one pillar that is stronger, right? So keep this in mind. The transformation to performance is way more than just, some people think it's glorified fitness or just productivity. It involves like a kind of a whole framework. And then what we typically do is we take people over 12 weeks to one specific goal that they absolutely want to achieve. Like the 500,000 launches Dakotas, for instance, but it can be anything, right? It can be, double, triple. And all of those things are always a measure of productivity. If you do this the right way, which is how I tell you guys to do, so first you self-evaluate. There's tons of tools online. You can do this on your own. The goal is that you understand yourself so profoundly that you can spot what is the right bottleneck. Then you solve the right bottleneck, right? If you have a focus problem, don't try to work on the strategy of your business, because the problem is focus. If you have a strategy problem, why are you trying to pick up a new habit, right? You have to understand what needs to be done and when, because the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong time. And then actually have a goal, right? We are doing performance has to have a goal. We're not randomly improving ourselves. No. We need a goal. Yeah, and this is how we do it. Well, typically what we don't get people 8 times more productive, right? Like McKinsey said, but we typically make them 3 times more productive because we have the tools and we test it out and it always works, right? And it always works quite fast, right? So if you want to help, you know where to find us, selfmastered.com/application. And now I'm all yours. Q&A time. What questions do you have that I can help you with?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. I will also link Self-Mastered into the recording as well, and I'll drop it in the chat in just a second. First question we have from Marco is, when do you read?
That's a great question. In between depending on the length of my kind of first meeting of the day, if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I have a slot there that I always try to read. But when I'm not working, I'm reading or hanging out with friends. So I read a lot. So on weekends, at the end of the day, when I'm not working, I'm typically reading or spending time with my wife or my friends. And I would say I read, I don't know, like 5, 6, 8 hours per week, let's say, more or less.
Have you found there's an optimal amount of time to learn, study, or get those types of inputs until you start to have a diminishing return?
No, because we always had, this is why I was telling you guys this. So, and this is one of the biggest problems. It's very easy to fall into this trap of continuously learning and learning and learning without having a goal. Typically what happens that most people will do just in case learning. So you learn all sorts of things just in case you need them, but you typically end up forgetting it. What is the way to typically remember more and make it more actionable and actually make it helpful is just in time learning. So what is the ideal amount of learning you need to do? Whatever the goal dictates you need, but always try not to spend too much time developing yourself for the sake of developing yourself, or reading for the sake of reading. It has to be a means to an end, not an end in itself. And this is important because it's very easy to fall into the trap that the more I read, the better I'll do. And that is not necessarily the case. And this is coming from a guy who reads like 30 books a year since he was 6 years old, right? So I read a lot, but I tend not to read what doesn't need to be read. Sometimes it's hard, but yeah, it's important. All right, so is that a good enough answer? Does that answer your question?
A great answer, 100%. Okay, we're getting a ton of questions here, so the engagement, people are really loving this. So I'm going to start to rapid fire some of these. A lot of people I speak to struggle with social persuasion, friend hangout, and beers. How do you advise people socialize and unwind with their friends without getting sucked into those bad habits?
Yes, a great question. Listen, so the goal is not to work every single day. The work is to be a highly functional, happy human being. But at the same time, we got to be careful with a social kind of life. So what I typically recommend is that you block 5 days a week in which you are crazy productive and you don't typically meet for beers or anything. That you devote yourself to what you said you were going to do. And typically at the end of the week, you gratify yourself with the social engagement. If you do it this way, it becomes what it is, really a gift, the ability to connect with people after having done good work. And in my experience, that allows you to balance both sides. Your willingness to persevere and build something and become a performer, but also the need of being connected with the people that matter to you. Does that make sense? And on the bad habits, I didn't cover that. Well, guys, if you know what an active recovery is, now you know what a passive recovery is, right? So the more alcohol you drink, the worse your performance typically will be. Now, I drink alcohol on weekends because I'm Spanish and wine is a religion. Like I'm not going to ask you to not drink at all, right? That's not the point. But you got to be mindful of what are the trade-offs that you're making. I'm able to consistently hit 4 and 5 ring fit session every single weekday, but I'm trained, right? So you got to just choose which habits are you able to sustain without compromising your performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great nuanced answer. We got a question here. What do you think of eating in the mornings?
It's important. So if any one of you is doing intermittent fasting, I would highly recommend you fast at night. Why is that? First of all, because the brain needs glucose to properly focus, right? If you have no glucose available, you will have less cognitive performance. So you need to have glucose going on. If you fast in the morning, you will typically have less ability to focus and concentrate. What most people will do is to drink a lot of water and drink a lot of coffee, which can work, but at some point, the quality of that focus is not as high. So the best model for intermittent fasting is to turn it upside down, is to not eat dinner. And that is even more effective because typically then the feeding window is shorter, the non-feeding window is longer, up to 16 hours or even more. And it also helps a lot with deep sleep and REM sleep because the brain and the brain is devoting no resources whatsoever to digestion. So that is my best advice. I fast, again, listen, I fast 5 days a week from Sunday to Thursday. On Friday and Saturday, I meet people, go to dinners, go to parties, just the same.
Great answer. We have Dave asking, interested in times of the day that you are most creative?
Myself,
Yes.
pretty much all, I mean, so I would say that my first two ring sessions are very good, like from like 10 to 2 and 2 to 4, 2 to 2, 12 to 2, so noon to 2, to the first two. The third is also good, and then it just goes down. But I'm consistent. I don't really care that much. I don't strategically segment the type of task I need to do. I just go and do them within 90-minute slots. So I would say there's not much difference in my case. But again, what I would suggest you guys do, and put this on Google, test your chronotype. The best test for this is the morningness, eveningness questionnaire, MEQ. Test it out, and it's kind of exact. Test it out, and then make the necessary tweaks on your schedule so you can align the prime hours to when you are supposed to be online. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Totally. We got a simple one here. Is reading on a Kindle or phone a big no-no?
So reading on a Kindle is better than reading on a phone. And reading on a book is better than reading on a Kindle. It depends on the amount of stimulation on the brain. Reading on the phone is typically hard because you get bombarded with notifications. The screen is brighter. The colors are also more brighter. So they typically capture attention more. Kindle is good, and reading a book is even better.
Awesome. Going back to the eating in the morning question, there's a follow-up that says, are there things we shouldn't eat in the mornings or things that we should definitely eat in the mornings?
As a general rule for performance, the nutrition aspect of things is that you want to have a stable glucose level in the blood. So we want to avoid huge spikes of glucose because that is taxing for the nervous system. So that typically entails having foods that are low on the glycemic index. So they liberate glucose slowly over time, which means that in the morning, the higher protein and fat that you can have and the less carbohydrates, typically the better. Now, not all carbohydrates are the same, but that advice is directionally correct. The more protein, typically the better. The more fat with that protein, typically the better. The more processed foods, the worse, especially if they have a hydrogenated fats and those kinds of things. So clean food, ideally high protein and high fat.
Awesome. I love this question. How long does it take most people before their routine becomes automatic?
What routine? Are we talking about habits in the morning? We're talking about having 5 ring fence sessions per day. Like what routine?
The 5
Stacey,
sessions.
if you want to.
The 5 sessions during your day that you're blocking, your time blocking days.
I would say if you're consistent with it, you can get there in 6 weeks, let's say 6 weeks, maybe less. But you can have fast results very quickly. And by fast results, I mean having 2 to 3 consistently, right? We have clients do that within 1 week or 2 weeks. And remember, most people only do one. Most people only do 2 hours, right, of so-so work. So having 3 is already huge. So according to all the data we have trained like 320 people at this point. On average, when they really maxed up is about 6 weeks. And they start seeing consistent results, as in at least 2, but typically 3 within 10 days, 2 weeks, once you really understand. Now, this depends on what is the bottleneck. Remember that everything you do has to be based on a profound understanding of yourself. So for instance, if there's something called, probably not the case, right? But just so you know how I'm thinking about this, there's something called attention deficit trait, which is a non-genetic condition. It is like a type of ADHD that is caused by technological stimulation. Some people develop that. If you happen to have that, it takes a little bit longer because we have to let the brain remove all that stress, typically rebuild the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that deals with memory and learning, that typically shrinks when you are highly stimulated for a long period of time. So everything is highly personalized. It really depends on your specific situation. But on average, 10 days, you should be at 3 ring fence sessions. And you'll see it's kind of simple. Just be strategic about how you structure your day, and also take rest seriously, right? The difference is not how hard you work. The difference is how hard you rest. That makes sense. Cool. Makes sense. People love when I say this, but it's true though. You have to learn how to rest.
Definitely. It's been one of the hardest lessons for me to learn this year, so that hits hard for me. Marco asks, are you taking supplements or other performance enhancers?
0. Absolutely 0. Well, a coffee in the morning, 1 coffee with my breakfast, but like no modafinil, no supplementation at all. Like I'm very careful with that. I'm fully optimized, right? And I'm very careful about the nutrition that I follow, but I follow no supplementation. In fact, unless you have ADHD or something like that, you shouldn't, because you are developing a crutch. And really, most of the non-ADHD medications, typically modafinil, they work on the dopamine receptors, and you can prime your dopamine receptors through good lifestyle design. So you don't need that. Now, in the past, I was narcoleptic, didn't share that, but I used to fall asleep at any moment. I had 4 crashes in 4 years when I was studying architecture. So I did modafinil back then, but I don't do it anymore. Like, you don't need it. Because over time, again, that is one more over stress input in the body, if that makes sense. We want to avoid that. We want to know that ourselves so we can consistently perform.
I love that. That's hitting hard. Definitely. We have another question about the mornings. If you only have 30 minutes for a morning routine, what would you say is the most essential?
Meditation. Absolutely no question about it. Meditation is the most important habit outside of exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And why is that? Because it is the only habit that allows you to accelerate neuroplasticity, so your ability to learn and memorize, but it also gives you it reduces the part of the brain, the amygdala, that deals with negative emotions. So you can over time be more calm, more collected, more in control. And it also sharpens your cognitive performance. There's no substitute to meditation. There's nothing you can do that will have the same impact as meditation has. So as I always tell my clients, you got to train everything. You got to train at the gym, you got to meditate, you got to have the good nutrition, and you got to have good sleep. And if you look at the literature or just simply review the story of some of the best performers, elite performers in sports, in the arts, whatever, most of them experience a huge change in performance when they pick up meditation. Like Novak Djokovic, for instance, Tom Brady, a lot of them have discussed meditation as something, Rafael Nadal, something that really helped them. So the number 1 habit everyone should do is meditation. Now, how much meditation and what type of meditation is typically what I get asked the follow-up question. So how much meditation? The latest research says that about 12 minutes a day for 4 weeks is enough to induce noticeable brain changes. So rewiring the brain through this practice. I do 20 minutes every day, at least once, typically twice. But you don't need 20 minutes. You need 12 minutes. How do you do it? That's the following question. It doesn't matter what you do. Meditation is just the simple act of focusing on one anchor, your breath, a mantra, a word, a sound, whatever. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you consistently do it. I do Buddhist meditation, but it can be any type of meditation. What matters is the consistency of it and never missing a day. And I do it first thing in the morning, even when I'm traveling, even on my wedding day. I don't care. I'll do it. That makes sense.
Hell yeah. I love that. You practice what you preach, and I love that. Awesome. I think that's every question that we had here. And we're pretty much right at time, so that is perfect timing. Leon, thank you so much. If people want to find you and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on Twitter, Leon Castillo SM, at Leon Castillo SM, or on selfmastered.com on the website. I'm on all socials, although I must admit that I don't check them much. I have a team for that. Yeah, probably Twitter is where I will check it out a couple times a week, probably.
Perfect. I'll drop all of that into the Zoom right now so people can drop you a follow and check out Selfmastered as well. Guys, if you're thinking about checking out Selfmastered and actually pulling the trigger, I would highly recommend it. Lara, Dakota, some of my other friends have taken it. They've had nothing but amazing things to say about it. I have not done it yet, but I can promise everyone in here that I will be in the future because I'm just a huge fan of Leon. I'm like a super fan that he doesn't know is a super fan quite yet. So thank you, Leon, for coming on. And guys, I hope you check out Leon's stuff and at least give him a follow on Twitter because he's the real deal.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your kind words. But guys, honestly, if you want to make me happy, apply this because it works. Don't let this collect digital dust. This stuff works. And this is going to have the highest impact on your career. It's not how much marketing you know, because you can focus 3 to 4 to even 5 sessions per day. I can guarantee you're going to learn faster than anyone else. So take this seriously, please. That's what's going to make me the most happy. Okay? Well, and subscribe to the channel. That would also make me happy on YouTube. That would also make me happy. Okay?
Awesome.
Cool, guys. Have an absolutely fantastic life. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Leon. Peace.
Bye-bye.